There's hidden history all over downtown Huntington Beach. Take Brewster's Ice House here on 6th Street. Did you know it has a connection to World War II? I'll tell you about it in just a minute. I'm Chris Epting. I'm a writer and a storyteller, the author of several books and many articles about Huntington Beach. And what I like best is uncovering history that you may not be familiar with. This is Hidden Huntington Beach. Like most communities in the United States, Huntington Beach was deeply impacted by World War II. While local recruiting offices filled up, the rest of the city went to work for its country. Back then, it was the grammar school, but in what today is the basement of Dwyer Middle School, an elaborate control center was established. The city came together to raise money with many war bond rallies all over town, as well as other events to gather materials to help in the war effort. And Huntington Beach didn't just provide time and energy to raise money and supplies, it also mobilized parts of the city to help in the war effort. Lake Park was taken over by the Army in December of 1941 at the start of World War II, and a camp was set up at this location. After the attack by Japan at Pearl Harbor, the U.S. Navy installed a submarine lookout post on the pier along with a heavy caliber machine gun. And the Bolsa Chica Gun Club also became part of our nation's coastal defense during World War II. A complex series of bunkers were built on the ridge right behind the clubhouse, and the area was also equipped with several large gun emplacements. As a result of these efforts, there was a significant presence of military personnel in the city. These images illustrate just how substantial that presence was. And of course, there was the tragic reality for many Japanese Americans in Huntington Beach, living primarily in the Wintersburg area, who were taken from their homes and shipped to internment camps as part of Executive Order 9066. Many would return after the war, but the scars would remain forever. Today, some traces of the wartime efforts still remain. Part of the old Rogers Senior Center on Orange Avenue is comprised of actual military barracks that were brought over from Santa Ana Army Base in Costa Mesa. The legendary bunkers out by Bolsa Chica, which for years were frequented by local explorers and became hangouts for many teenagers in the area, were eventually sealed off. Today, it's hard to tell anything was ever there, and it's intriguing to think about what it might be like to gain access one day, or at least do some electronic underground mapping of the vast complex. But for today, we are left to look at the hill and simply wonder. Over by the site of the gun club, two of the massive metal rings that were built to hold the gun emplacements still remain, stoic sentinels that connect us to the wartime era. A sign at the site details the war history of the area. Okay, I opened this episode just off of Main Street in front of Brewster's Ice. Why? Because Brewster's Ice actually played a part during World War II. It's true, at the old Bolsa Chica Gun Club, Brewster's Ice, the structure, was the meat locker that would keep the food for soldiers who were stationed when Bolsa Chica became an outpost for the U.S. Army as part of Fort MacArthur. After the war ended, though, the Brewster family purchased the building, brought it downtown, and it sits there today, an actual World War II artifact. Now, as to why I'm standing in a parking lot at Walmart, I'm going to tell you that story right now. You met my friend Pat Maka on a previous episode of Hidden Huntington Beach, where we visited the site of Meadowlark Airport. He's an aerospace historian who for years has tracked down the exact locations of many military crashes. So Pat, Huntington Beach during World War II, I mean, the war had a pretty large effect outside of just, young people going into war. The war definitely played a part here in the community, right?
You bet. So along the Bolsa Chica, the fortifications there, the beaches were patrolled. Huntington Beach Pier, machine gun nests, troops 24/7.
Bolsa Chica, there were the Panama guns out there on the bluff, right?
Right, two of the 6-inch Panamas.
And today you can go see...
The roundels are still there, though, the hard stands.
What about the bunkers that used to exist during World War II that were built there when the gun club essentially became a barracks?
Right. The one bunker was totally destroyed in the modern era, not too many years ago.
Did you ever get to go down in there?
No, but I did see it from the outside because we lived about 2 blocks from it.
And there were also radio towers up there. When the Army took over the gun club, they really transformed it. It was no longer a gun club.
Right.
It really was like an active working base, right?
Yeah, it was like a headquarters facility and a lookout post, and really responsible for everything on this south coast of Huntington Beach.
Now, why are we standing in a Walmart parking lot at Talbot and Beach Boulevard?
Because on January 3rd, 1942, an airplane similar to this, a Lockheed Hudson
little larger
bomber,
though, right?
Little larger, crashed right here where we're standing,
Right
within
here.
within 100 yards of where we're at, that ballpark. So the Hudson was a airplane built by Lockheed. It was an airliner modified to a bomber, and the British were the first to buy it. And they were going over with the Brits into combat with it, and then our Air Force and Navy picked it up. And in Navy service, one of these sank 2 U-boats on the East Coast.
Wow.
So it had a good history. But here in the States, it was used by the Army Air Force mostly for training. So this particular airplane that crashed here had departed Long Beach Airport with a civilian instructor pilot and an Army pilot just to check him out in the Hudson. They called it the A-29, A for attack. So they're in this area. When the controls lock up, freeze, they have no choice but to bail out. Both men do it successfully and without injury. The airplane comes in of its own volition right here and crashes.
Wow. Now, again, it wasn't a parking lot back then, obviously. It was farmland, right?
Farmland, nobody around, so that was good. That was a good thing.
Right.
Nobody was hurt.
Now, the model you've got here of the actual plane, it's affixed to what looks like a piece of an airplane.
It is. It's affixed actually to a Hudson rudder pedal that
So
a
this
friend
is the
of
kind
mine.
of plane.
Yeah, that's right. So this rudder pedal, and there'd be 2 on each side. You had 2 pilots here, pilot and co-pilot. So you had 4 of these in the front part of the aircraft. And it's just remarkable that a friend of mine in San Diego had this in his junkyard, so to speak,
Amazing.
from a Hudson, a Lockheed Hudson.
Now, obviously, Orange County had a lot of these events, right? I mean, Huntington Beach wasn't the only place where you had these kinds of things happening. You've gone and visited the sites of a lot of these.
Quite a few, yes. Because the Marines had a base in Orange County and many accidents associated with that. The Navy had facilities here. The Army had facilities at Long Beach Airport, so we had P-38s lost in our area here in the county and offshore as well. So you have a number of losses, some of which regrettably were fatal.
Well, on that note, there was actually one accident in Huntington Beach where there were fatalities. It's one of the most tragic events I think that's ever befell the community. You and I are going to go over there right now and visit the actual site where there was a crash during World War II. So why don't we
Right.
head over to Newland Street right now
Okay.
and tell that story over there, okay?
You bet.
Let's go.
Several years ago, a woman named Maria Mendez Young reached out to me to see if I might be able to spearhead the effort of getting a marker placed to commemorate an event that deeply affected her family. I had had no knowledge of the 1943 plane crash that killed 4 children, a wartime tragedy that absolutely needed recognition. So we went to work. Of course, I recruited Pat to help with the research, and soon after, thanks to efforts that grew to include City Councilperson Barbara Del Glaze and State Senator John Morlock, we made it happen. But Pat and Maria and I had never all stood together at the exact site where the crash took place. Until now. To be clear, the location of the plane crash is on State Beach, not City Beach, so the process of getting a marker placed has nothing to do with the city. I'll keep you all posted on our efforts to have that marker placed as close to the actual site as possible.
I can't believe we're here. For starters, just to get the story going, you contacted me a number of years ago, and you had read that I had helped with a marker program, getting a historic marker placed, and there was a story you wanted to tell me. What was it that you wanted to tell me back then?
Well, I had found out through planning my wedding that a plane had crashed here on the beach of Huntington Beach.
And we're right on PCH by Newland.
Yes, and my mom was really hesitant about my deciding to have my wedding here on the beach. And she finally had to open up and tell me that her sisters were actually killed here from that plane that crashed
Right
on the
here?
beach. Right here.
So Pat, can you describe exactly what happened that day with the plane that crashed here June 27, 1943? Paint the picture of what happened that day. It's 1943.
It's June of 43, and the pilot takes off from Santa Ana Army Air Base in a P-38G Lockheed Lightning. He's on a routine training proficiency flight. And in the process of that flight, he loses an engine. And there is fire associated with that. So he bails out of the aircraft, points the airplane out to sea, thinking that no one will be harmed. But he forgot about the centrifugal force of one engine there, still operating, pulling, taking the airplane back towards the coast. The airplane comes in, people are here, members of your family are here. Fire. We know that 4 children were killed. We know that around 40 people were injured by flying debris and aviation fuel. So there were many burn injuries. It was a horrific scene.
Describe that day, because your mom wasn't here that day.
No.
Circumstances prevented her from coming here with the rest of her family.
Right.
Describe her day.
She stayed home to take care of her grandma that was blind, and the day went on, and when night came, her grandma just said something's wrong, something happened. You know, my mom's family changed forever. I mean, her 2 sisters died, her brother was badly burned, and I remember as a kid never knowing why his back looked the way it did. I saw him take his shirt off when he went swimming in his pool, and he had these burns, and he had 2nd-degree burns on his back. And you know, so I'm sure, you know, my mom tells stories about how she'd have to put cream on his back because it would itch and hurt. And
There were 2 families, your family,
And the
her family,
Borregos.
and the Borregos came out here. As she told me, when they got here, the husbands, when they were taking like a Sunday drive.
Yeah.
Right? They
Just
didn't
gonna
even
have a
plan on going to the beach.
picnic and-
They stopped by the beach and thought, hey, we're here, let's get food. The husbands go to get food, and in that time when they're gone is when the plane crashes here. So they come back, and the husbands find the chaos here.
the kids were getting put into the ambulance when they came back.
For those of you, if you know where Newland is, the Huntington Beach Pier is obviously not far away. Pat, that day, the first responders were lifeguards
Right.
who witnessed this from the pier. They saw this happen. And Bud Higgins was there that day
Yes.
and commandeered the lifeguards. They were the first responders here. They were these teenagers, in some cases, were brought into this a World War II crash situation with carnage and fire and gas and fuel, all this around. What was that like for them that day?
Well, they get here as fast as they can, and I don't know what modus operandi they had, vehicle or whatever, and then to render first aid. And the equipment they had in those days is not the equipment we have today.
Pat, this event, people who grew up in Huntington Beach that were even alive back then don't seem to be familiar with it. How could an event this catastrophic, this impactful, not be more well known?
Because so much was going on at the time. World War II was in progress. And so everything that was happening, this was like a little flash, small news article. Most people in Southern California probably weren't aware of it.
Right. You sort of became an expert on this event. What did you learn about the pilot of this tragedy?
You know, you had asked my mom a question one time, and I had never heard her say that my grandma was never angry at the pilot. And that really touched me. So then I started asking Pat about this pilot and wanting to know more about him, because I was angry at first, because I'm like, I was thinking this was a trained pilot, he should have known better, but he was just a kid. And when I learned that he was just a kid,
21 years old?
21 years old, no fault of his own, and the tragic life he had after this, you know, I wanted to do more research on him, and it was heartbreaking. So heartbreaking.
He had a lot of deaths in his family.
A lot of deaths in his family. Yeah.
All right, so I move as we close this episode. Let's use this opportunity. Let's pool our efforts and let's see what we can do to have something permanent placed here. State Beach, I know there's a little red tape. involved with things like that. But you
Yes.
know what? When there's a will, there's a way.
Yes.
We've got the plaque already. I think we've got good ideas about what we could do to help commemorate it. So if we're all in on this, what do you say we make
Yes.
this another
Absolutely.
project for us?
Absolutely.
We have to
We
come
in?
up with a team name. We're going to get this done.
All right. Well, there'll be a part 2 on this for sure. Thank you for joining us today and being part of this. Maria, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Not knowing when you're seeing this, it is your birthday today,
Oh,
too. So
yes.
happy birthday.
Happy
Thank
birthday.
you.
Thanks for
Thank you
joining
so
us.
much.
Pat, thank you as always.